So now I'm doing this segment because, as much as it pains me to say this, fam, I have to give credit to Saiger and Tucker for this segment in general, because I've been talking to Glenn Greenwald. We had him on our show. Glenn had put it upon himself to call out the free speech grifters on the right, the people who did shows with Glenn Greenwald mocking the liberal social justice warrior authoritarian on college campuses. There are people who made their entire career off of that. Those same people are turning around and on the snap and on the command of a foreign government is saying that Americans should be censored because they don't support the criminal occupation, the regime, and the genocide of the Gazan people. So I said with Glenn, I told Glenn, because Glenn said to me that, oh yeah, I know a few people on the right that are calling out the free speech hypocrisy. And I'm like, man, I'm not seeing it. So to be fair, this is the first time I'm seeing it. You got Saiger and Tucker, two very influential people on, I would say, at least the online right, the young youth right. We cover how Breaking Point's community is very conservative. So this is Saiger and Tucker getting this answer and getting this issue correct on Israel. Now, I've been very open about the fact that Tucker Carlson is very fucking annoying to me. I think he's fraudulent in a lot of ways. One thing that I called him out on was the fact that he's doing this Julian Assange thing now, which is good for the Julian Assange family. But how can you claim you're a Julian Assange supporter when you're a Trump supporter when Donald Trump tried to kill Julian Assange? This is something that I've been bringing up quite some time, and I've been wanting to see him confronted with this. And the funny thing enough, Saiger finally asked Tucker this. So this is actually a pretty good clip. There's going to be things they say that's going to irk the shit out of me because Tucker Carlson's annoying as hell to me. He just is. His anti-blackness drives me crazy. I'm against the establishment, except when black people stand up against the establishment. I talk about the concept of agent provocateurs during the Canadian Trump envoy, but during Black Lives Matter, I'm going to smear everyone who against the police state as violent thugs who burn down their own cities, even though agent provocateurs and the police was doing that. So there are a lot of things that Tucker does that irk the shit out of me, especially his rhetoric on China. But this is good. It's good to see him call out the right. So let's watch the clip. Let's get into it.
In the middle finger, even while growing up next to them, living next to them for years. Yeah. I've watched it with Ukraine and I watch it now with Israel. You know, I watched in particular, there was a lot of consternation around some comments you made, I think by Ben Shapiro and other, where you were like, well, I've never seen this level of care about Americans who are dying of fentanyl, which I think is a traditional nationalist message. And yet I've watched the entire kind of right-wing ecosystem get embroiled in fundamentally what is a third world conflict. Now, we can say support, not support, we can have criticisms, etc. of that. But what explains this like literal allegiance to narrative on Ukraine, on Israel? Why is it that so many of these people don't seem to have the same level of care for actual American citizens?
I find it really distressing. And in both of those conflicts, I approached it with a clean conscience because I just don't have strong feelings one way or the other. And I'm not hostile. I've never hated Ukraine. I don't have any feelings about Ukraine. And Russia, same thing. I've never been to either place, and I'm not invested emotionally. So I can just look at it from an American perspective. In the case of Israel and the Arab world, I've spent a fair amount of time in both, and I like both. And I felt terrible for the people who were killed on October 7th. I still do. So I had no weird motive. I was just like thinking about it from an American perspective. Is this good for us or is it not? And
see, once again, Tucker saying, I like Israel. Why would you like Israel? Like, this is one thing it's stuff that bothers me. You know what I mean? Like, I will 100% acknowledge that Tucker Carlson does good segments and he is good on his coverage of war. I am surprisingly impressed by his coverage of Ukraine. But his blind spots are so annoying. Why you like Israel? Why do you keep fear-mongering over China? Why do you keep confusing the workers and claiming that socialism is the enemy? Anyway, sorry. I know I'm a picky ass motherfucker, but it's very hard to win me over, I guess. Like, let's play.
I was just amazed by the intolerance and the willingness to immediately go to invective and character assassination. And it's like, I said, first of all, if the people who live in Gaza who are being moved out are so evil and dangerous that they can't live in the region, why would you want them to move into my country? I mean, what are you saying? They can't live there because it's too scary to live next to them, but they can live next to me? So I at that point, I felt very hostile about that because it showed such contempt for me and my family and my neighbors and my country. It is my country. That's how I feel about it anyway. It's all of our country. And so I was like disgusted by that. And I said so. And I don't know why that's weird. Why wouldn't I be offended by that? And then it was immediately, I'm a hater or a bigot or something.
So his entire analysis of the Palestinian conflict right now is just complaining about the concept that there may be Palestinian immigrants here. I don't get the appeal of this guy and a lot of stuff, but I let play till I get the part two I agree with. Like, I don't understand. Like, so that's your takeaway of the Israel-Palestine conflict is I don't want to live next to Palestinians? You got to see that's such a weird angle there to take. Let's continue.
Something like that. None of that registered with me because, first of all, I've been attacked for so long, but attacks that aren't true. If somebody said, wow, you've gained some weight this summer, I'd be like, oh, it would hurt my feelings because it's true. But if someone's like, oh, you're a hater or you hate, that's not true. So I don't really care. But I did think it showed like the level of not just corruption, which I knew, but of like emotional instability and craziness. I mean, there are people, and I stopped reading any of it, but there are people on the right who have spent the last 2 months every single day focused on a conflict in a foreign country as our own country becomes dangerously unstable on the brink of financial collapse with tens of millions of people who shouldn't be here in the country. We don't know their identities or the purpose of their being here. Like stuff that's could destroy the country for real and make it impossible for my kids to live here. They've said nothing.
Where's the conversation about the theft of labor value? You guys see how Tucker gets old for me in RBN? Because I don't have this fear of the other. I don't have this fear of demographic change that white America have. So you demonizing the other and saying, oh my God, we got to stop the other from coming here. Completely misses for me. As a Marxist, as a revolutionary, I believe in the theory of labor value. Our number one enemy is the people that siphon our labor. The immigrant is not the Walter family that is siphoning the labor of Walmart workers. So why do Tucker Carlson keep trying to mislead the worker about who our true enemy is? But let continue.
About that, and they're focused with laser intensity on foreign conflicts. And I'm like, at some point, I've got 4 kids. If I'm so caught up in the problems of my neighbor's children and completely ignoring my own children as they get addicted to drugs and kill themselves, I'm not against helping my neighbor's kids, but clearly I don't love my kids. I mean,
right.
that's the only logical conclusion. And they don't care about the country at all. And that's kind of their prerogative. But I do, because I have no choice, because I'm from here. My family's been here hundreds of years. I plan to stay here. Like, I'm shocked by how little they care about the country, and including the person you mentioned. And I can't imagine how someone like that could get an audience of people.
They're talking about Ben Shapiro, by the way.
Who claimed to care about America, because he doesn't, obviously, right?
Right. Well, I mean, Tucker, we've seen it too on free speech. I mean, people who become multimillionaires, who've made entire careers, who've literally became famous, on this very reason. I know you've spoken about this previously, but it's very important to our audience as well. Is that standing up for free speech rights of people you disagree with is probably the most important exercise, and we've seen some of that come for American citizens on Palestine. How do you work through this too, when we're both under such immense pressure, even social pressure, of like, how could you support this? Take maybe the context of the university presidents. We've got billionaires like Bill Ackman, I'm curious what you make of this. My assessment is they're upset that they're not included as marginalized within the DEI regime. They claim to be against the DEI regime. But will you really keep going to make sure that, all this racial hatred and all this other that's been enshrined in elite institutions will be, once you get a win, are you really going to keep going past that? What's your assessment of this general moment on Palestinian, free speech hypocrisy and more?
Well, we have free speech in this country, and it applies to people we disagree with by definition, period. I mean, it's the first right guaranteed that, of course, it precedes government. It's given to us by God, as the document says, but it's the first right enumerated in our founding documents. So it's the foundation of the country. And so you can't give any ground on that, like none. And anyone who would give ground on that, and I would include the governor of Florida, who I think is a good governor, and I like him personally, but signing a censorship bill is completely unacceptable. And I don't care what your motives are. I mean,
I am glad Tucker Carlson is saying that finally. This is not the first BDS ban by Ron DeSantis. This is what I've been mentioning as one of the reasons why I don't like Ron DeSantis and the quote-unquote free speech right, as they cheer on Ron DeSantis silencing pro-Palestinian voices. But good for Tucker for now acknowledging it, right? Are we going to acknowledge it with Trump? It's going to be very interesting here coming soon. I'm going to let it continue.
This spring, there was some Black nationalist group that was indicted by the Biden Justice Department for its views on Russia. And my first thought was, that's not acceptable. Now, how much do I have in common with the Black nationalist group that I guess probably hates people who look like me? Actually, I probably 100% chance I'd like him if I had dinner with him. To be honest, I'm sure they're really good guys. I mean, I just sort of feel that, but whatever. It was irrelevant to me.
See, now this is why I believe that Tucker got removed from Fox News when they had Molly on. When Tucker Carlson had the Uhuru Black Socialist Movement, I don't know why they call them Black Nationalists. They are Black Socialists, and you can see Tucker's white identity politics oozing. Like, once again, you guys see why he annoys me. Even when you write on this issue, like, he just assumed that we all hate white people because we want to resist our oppression, because we have criticism of the country that you have criticism of. Tucker had criticism of the country. It's okay if he had criticism of it. If Black radicals like Uhuru Black Socialist Movement, RBN, if we had criticism of this country, I mean, we hate white people. What is that about from Tucker? The assumption that Uhuru hate white people. And I'm glad he kind of calms us like, oh, actually, if I met people, we probably like each other. So what's up with that first instinct of engaging in white identity politics? I will never understand. Coming from the guy who claims he hates talking about race, he claims that he hates identity politics, his first reaction upon seeing a Black radical group who is agreeing with him on the issue of Russia and Ukraine is, oh, I assume they don't like me. So I give Tucker props in what he's getting right on the free speech part here. I'm just explaining the stuff that Tucker says that annoys me. The anti-Blackness that annoys me. Right? Guys, are you guys really expecting to have this white boy revolution? You guys expect millionaires like Tucker Carlson going to hit the street and fight the police state in order to implement change? This guy got squeezy during Ferguson. He got squeezy during 2020. You guys think the Tucker Carlson right-wing populists are going to be there to institute the revolution? No, it's going to be us. It's going to be the Black radicals and our allies. So the people who have the strategy of building a revolution through the white suburbs, that makes inherently no sense to me. But with that said, props for Tucker for standing up for the Black group, but I don't understand why he inherently viewed them as his enemy. You guys see that? You guys see how he's willing to use his identity to separate class consciousness and people who would agree on something major like Ukraine? Like, that comment was very weird.
For its views on Russia. And my first thought was, that's not acceptable. Now, how much do I have in common with the Black nationalist group that I guess probably hates people who look like me? Actually, I probably 100% chance I'd like him if I had dinner with him. To be honest, I'm sure they're really good guys. I mean, I just sort of feel that, but whatever. It was irrelevant to me. You can't do that. You can't try to put people in prison for expressing opinions the government doesn't like or the ruling class doesn't like, or any opinion. Any opinion must be protected, or no opinions are protected. So anybody who seeks to limit my ability to say what I think, believe what I want, is treating me as a slave. I mean, not as a human being, and certainly not as a citizen. That's just really clear. And I don't know why people don't grasp this. But one sort of parenthetical, ironic note, to see people who spent a career mocking, the sensitive liberals on campus who want safe spaces, and they're feeling in danger because opinions are violence. Say that exact same thing. People feel unsafe. What? No. Words are not violence. You have to tolerate them in a free society or it's not a free society. As to the question of DEI, the whole thing is Jim Crow. I mean, it's grotesque. The idea that certain people on the basis of immutable characteristics get certain privileges and other people are hurt on the basis of their immutable characteristics, like that's totally incompatible with America. It's got to be a colorblind meritocracy or it can't keep going because it's a pluralistic society. There's no majority of anything that has anything in common. So to keep the country together, it has to be based on merit. I mean, game this out. And also, by the way, we're going to get to violence really soon if this stuff continues. Right. If you tell people that this group or that group is bad because they're in that group, because they look a certain way or because their parents looked a certain way, if you tell them that over time, that group's going to get hurt. And we don't need to guess about this. Well, actually, it happened in Europe not that long ago, but it's happened throughout history. So why are we tolerating this even for a second? And the reason, of course, is white guilt and self-hatred. Well, whatever. Get over it. It's not about white people. It's not about any specific group. It's about the country. The country can't.
What is he talking about? You guys see, this annoys the shit out of me about Tucker because he went off about 90 seconds there while I'm nodding my head. And you guys see how he purposely misdiagnoses the problem. He said he believes that Zionists are censoring pro-Palestinian activists, which are largely black and brown people, because of white guilt? That makes zero sense at all. And Tucker fans, they just listen to him say stupid shit all the time. And once again, I will acknowledge that on Ukraine and calling out his own party, the Republicans, and a few issues he's good on. But this is what we cannot tolerate. What did I just criticize the Vanguard and many other people for pushing John Fetterman and doing? They are pushing confusion to the workers. The same thing people criticize liberals of doing, of using identity politics to divide the workers. That is exactly what Tucker Carlson is doing. He's implanting the idea to his white audience that there's this anti-white conspiracy theory. You can't work with these people because they want to destroy you. He distrustful of the Uhuru Black Socialist movement because they feel like they're anti-white for whatever fucking reason. And this is just textbook white identity politics. So I'm asking the chat, I'm looking at the chat here. Someone explain to me the link between Zionists who are mostly white, censoring people who are mostly black and brown and white guilt. Someone explain it to me. 3, 2, 1, please. That is probably the dumbest thing that I heard recently. I heard a lot of dumb things every day today. But man, you were just killing it. And then you just squandered it because despite the fact that you're killing it for 90 seconds, you just confused the shit out of everyone at the end. You guys, I want to play this part again. And this part is exactly why Tucker Carlson bothers me, man.
That over time, that group's going to get hurt. And we don't need to guess about this. Well, actually, it happened in Europe not that long ago, but it's happened throughout history. So why are we tolerating this even for a second? And the reason, of course, is white guilt and self-hatred. Well, whatever. Get over it.
That's your analysis. That's your analysis of the censorship threat coming from Zionism. You believe it's a mechanism of anti-whiteness? This guy is full of shit. What this guy just on Jimmy Show? He was just on Jimmy Show, and they were talking about how little they care about race. Remember that? How little bit they care about race? How little Tucker Carlson care about race? He's like, man, race don't interest me. I'm not interested in race unless I'm talking about white people. Then race is really real. Then there's a conspiracy theory of a ton of people coming after white people. Isn't it interesting how white people who deny racism, the only racism they care about is anti-white racism? Isn't that self-serving? You gotta see how I stand up for the racism that Palestinians face. I stand up for the racism that Chinese people face. I talk about the anti-Chinese rhetoric in this country right now. You guys see, as a black American and fight for my people, and I will stand against white supremacy no matter what. I stand and I fight for my people, but I call it out when I see it for everybody. The problem with these people is they like, oh my God, racism is real. Oh my God, I'm tired of you guys talking about race. And then the next second, they be like, oh my God, what's up with all this anti-white racism? White America be testing me, man. I know you guys get mad when I say this shit, but you guys test me with your violent hypocrisy. It's absurd, man. How do people not see this? So many people say they like this guy. I don't like him. I don't understand how people like Tucker Carlson. He is literally someone who weaponizes identity politics all the time. We are talking about Zionist censorship, and you bring up an anti-white conspiracy theory? The dumbest shit I ever heard. It doesn't matter what they say before that. You are here to confuse the workers.
It's not about white people. It's not about to guess about this. Anything that has news. Right. If you tell people that this group or that group is bad because they're in that group, because they look a certain way or because their parents looked a certain way, if you tell them that over time, that group's going to get hurt. And we don't need to guess about this. Well, actually, it happened in Europe not that long ago, but it's happened throughout history. So why are we tolerating this even for a second? And the reason, of course, is white guilt and self-hatred. Well, whatever. Get over it. It's not about white people. It's not about any specific group. It's about the country. The country can't continue if we allow this to continue. So I think DEI is, people say, well, you don't like it because you're white. It hurts you or whatever.
How many working class people in this country are affected by this? I know people that are struggling with cost. Do you guys see? This is what they rail on. This culture war bullshit. Deeply unserious culture war bullshit. In a segment where I agree with you on the premise of the segment and where you're calling out right wing for abandoning free speech, despite the fact that we had this agreement, you can't help yourself but to bring up white identity politics. Just to bring up completely irrelevant bullshit that has nothing to do with Zionist censorship. What do white guilt, what do all this have to do with Zionist censorship that your party, that Trump, that the people that you buddy with support?
Well, okay, but yeah, sure. But that's kind of not the point. I wouldn't like it if it was aimed at Filipinos. And I would be every bit as loud about it. Like, why would I like that? It's totally immoral. It's the thing we said we hated, Jim Crow, and the Nuremberg laws. I mean, name it. It's like, it's the original sin of man, attacking people on the basis of things that they can't control. They were born with. Like, you can't do that, period.
I couldn't agree more. I want to ask you a little bit about, it's funny. For years, people have been like, Tucker is a Trump sycophant. And I said, well, I've always said, I thought you were misunderstood because you would criticize Trump for things that but only for things that they didn't want you to criticize him for. You would praise him on that, but you would criticize him for things like economic policy, for foreign policy, for things, though, that the liberal establishment actually agreed with him on. I know you talked recently about supporting Trump as a result of the Mar-a-Lago raid and more. I'm curious, given that his biggest legislative accomplishment as president was a Paul Ryan-style Tax Cuts and Jobs Act bill.
Yes.
What's your confidence that things will change economically in the second term? Or do you have any confidence at all?
I mean, you're absolutely right.
Now, I was shocked to hear this question for Saiger because Saiger essentially like, man, if you got all these criticism for Trump, what's going on here? Now, listen to Tucker's answer here. I find it very interesting because something that bothers me is the fact that Tucker cares about Julian Assange, but he supports the person that tried to kill Julian Assange. And this is the same criticism I have of progressive left. You guys saying you're for Medicare for all means nothing if you're supporting Democrats. Tucker Carlson saying he's against war means nothing if he's supporting Donald Trump and Republicans. So let's see how you answer this question.
I was offended by that, not on ideological grounds, because I don't think that's what the country needed. And the fact that the carried interest loophole remained in that legislation enraged me then and enrages me thinking about it now. I mean, I don't think that we should have different tax rates for, work or money. I mean, I think, if you invest, you pay the same tax rate as someone who goes to work every day, period. And I don't understand why we have, the richest people paying half the taxes. I think that's actually insane and it will make your country volatile over time. It discourages work. How could it not? They don't want you to smoke cigarettes, so they tax cigarettes more than they tax, say, eggs. And that, discourages people from smoking. Well, if you tax labor at twice the rate of capital, what are you discouraging? Labor. And I believe in labor. I believe in work. I think it confers dignity. I really mean that. It's not a talking point. It's true for me. If I had $1 billion, I still go to work every day because I'm a man. And that's my identity. It's my purpose. I want to contribute something. So
why aren't you fighting for the workers who have their labor value exploited? I'm here to explain to you guys that as us Marxists, us socialists, we are the builders. We are the workers. We are the ones who want to put the work, and we want to pay them well so they take care of their family. So if you care so much about the workers, your number one concern should be wage theft. Your number one concern should be the theft and the labor value that being stolen from the workers. Meanwhile, his number one concern is talking about how white people is trained and talking about tax bullshit. It's not about tax to me, man. That what the Bernie crats got wrong. That's what I used to get wrong. Tax the rich. No, we need to seize the means of production. Anyway, let's continue.
Any society that discourages that is insane. And that bill continued to do that. So yeah, I'm mad about it. And about a lot of other things. I mean, but on the other hand, you're like, it's a choice and you got to go with the better one, I guess. In general, I kind of just want to stay out of politics because it's not appealing to me on any level. And also, honestly, I just really don't like the people, just personally. You know, Nikki Haley's like a disgusting person in person. And I just don't want to be around anyone like that ever in my life because I'm 54 and life's too short and I have all these wonderful people I love around me. I want to be with them and my dogs. Mm-hmm. So, however, the Rada Mar-a-Lago, the Colorado Supreme Court decision yesterday, those are kind of, that's too far. And so it's not about defending Trump, the man, who I actually like personally. I think he's hilarious and interesting. But even if I hated him, I would still feel the same way, that you can't allow that. If you allow, say, someone to be punished without being convicted of a crime, the Colorado Supreme Court said yesterday that Trump has to be punished for committing insurrection. Well, he's never been convicted of insurrection. Right. So if you allow that, it's like, I think Sagar Enjeti is a, wife beater. Mm-hmm. So we're going to put him in jail. Well, actually, he's never even been charged with wife beating, much less convicted. How can we put him in jail? Well, that's a precedent that can't stand. You can't have that. And I would say, by the way, same for Joe Biden. If they tried to do it to Biden, I'd be like, you can't do that because you'll destroy this essential thing we have, which is a fair justice system. But nobody else seems to care. But I care,
Yeah, you certainly do. I'm curious, you've always taken a lot of flack too, again, from the establishment here in Washington, mostly right, around your position on economics. You talked about the carried interest loophole. I'm curious what you think of unions and Republican policy towards unions, especially given that so many union voters are now backing Trump, not just for cultural reasons, but also for hope in a different type of economic message. How do you think Republicans should think about unions?
I mean, I have so many, of course, in a union, have been my whole adult life. My father was in a union, after SAG. And I, as a kid, worked in a union plant in a factory and for 3 months. So I've seen it from a bunch of different angles and I've worked in union shops and television. I mean, the idea of unions is very appealing to me. You need a counterbalance to corporate power. There's the owner of the company and then the people he employs whose labor makes him rich, and they should have some power too. I completely agree with that 100%. Mm-hmm. Labor unions in the United States have behaved so despicably, sold out their members so completely on the issue of immigration. I mean, labor unions were responsible historically for limits on immigration because more people willing to work for less undermines the bargaining position of labor. Obviously, I mean, that's not high math, okay?
I have been pushing back on this my entire life. Do you guys know what the theory of labor value is? So all profit is theft of labor. That's what profit is. So the Walton family, who make historic profits, Elon Musk, who make historic profits, Best Buy, who makes historic profit, Home Depot, who make historic profits, there is no middle ground that magically make them pay the worker less. Do you guys know why the capitalists pay the worker less? So they can make more profit. And then in order to increase more profit, in order to make more profit, they raise the price, they pass the prices on to the consumer. And then once they can't do that anymore, they exploit even more labor. That's why wages haven't increased despite inflation. They drive the wages of the workers down in order to increase profits. That's the theory of labor value. And I have not seen anyone communicate to me how does the immigrant prevent Jeff Bezos from paying the Amazon worker the profit value that he has earned. This idea that immigrants are the reason why the capitalist class is not paying you right is bullshit. I am a revolutionary. I am a Marxist. I do not believe in that. And no one can explain to me why that makes sense. You have all these corporations. You have all these people making record profits. How does the illegal immigrant prevent the business from paying the worker his value as they are making maximum profit? The immigrant has nothing to do with that. The capitalists use the immigrant as a scapegoat. Instead of the white working class looking at the capitalist class and saying, why you're not paying us more, the capitalist class say, hey, look at the immigrant over there. He's the reason why you're not making more. And dumbass white America, they fall for it. It's absurd. There's immigration everywhere. There's exploitation under capitalism. If you have a business that is profitable, you pay your workers. If under their theory, right, if you have someone who hired a legal immigrant and save money by hiring the illegal immigrant, why don't he pass the savings on to the worker? They don't. It's all profit. And even if the illegal immigrant wasn't in the equation, do you guys think if the illegal immigrant wasn't in the equation, that the Walton family, oh man, God damn it, we had no illegal immigration this year. I guess I gotta pay my workers. Do you guys really think that's how it works? Do you guys think Jeff Bezos is like, oh God damn it, they closed the border. Damn it, I gotta pay Amazon workers now. Do you guys think Burger King and McDonald's is like, oh no, immigration is down. I guess I gotta raise the wages. That's not how it works. And this is a great comment. Immigrant job taking threat is a corrosive tactic to suppress wages. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy on purpose by capitalists. They say, oh, if we have illegal immigrants, we're going to drive down the cost of labor. They decrease the value of labor. But they are the ones who are hiring illegal immigrants. Why is there not laws under the books that make it illegal for you to hire the illegal immigrants? Why aren't the capitalists being sent in jail? Because the capitalists have the power in the system. And it doesn't matter if they do something illegal like hire a legal immigrant, they won't be sent to prison. So Tucker's analysis here blows my mind. Talking about unions, and there's a legitimate criticism of unions to be had, which we have. The Marxist criticism that unions was captured by the capitalist class, which is why they don't represent workers no more. That is what we explained to you guys many times before. This happened during the 70s and 80s when unions were gutted, and then capitalists realized that workers got a lot of their rights, like vacation time, paid maternity leave, during when communists was in charge of the unions. So then the capitalist class is like, all right, I guess we got to become pro-union, infiltrated, and then they turn unions weak. And then you have union bosses that represent the corporation and the board instead of the worker during labor struggle. That's the criticism of unions. The criticism of unions is not that somehow they enabled the immigration crisis. I'm not even sure how factual this is. That is not the criticism of unions. The criticism of unions is that they side with the Tucker Carlsons of the world. They side with the capitalist class while people are taking labor actions. We pretty much had the criticism of. We already covered the free speech part. I'll just play one more part of this video, and we wrap up.
Okay,
right.
And so for labor unions to be members so completely on the issue of immigration, I mean, labor unions were responsible historically for limits on immigration because more people willing to work for less undermines the bargaining position of labor. Obviously, I mean, that's not high math, okay?
Right.
And so for labor unions to be encouraging mass immigration, I'm trying not to use vulgarity here, but screws over their own members and betraying people.
No, union bosses siding with management when they strike. Union bosses helping prevent strikes like they do all the time. That hurts labor, not this boogeyman of the other you're creating that had nothing to do with our labor value being stolen. So this is why we got to correct these people, even people saying criticism of the establishment we want to take down, because are they leading the workers to the correct place or are they confusing them? We just talked about on the stream earlier today how Marianne Williamson supporters, John Fetterman supporters, they are confusing the workers. When you hear them talk, they're like, man, we want health care for the workers. We want a minimum wage increase. We want to end the wars. So we need to support John Fetterman, Marianne Williamson. Oh, Jesus Christ. Everything you said before don't matter if you're confusing the worker on the solution. If you're not able to identify the problem, if you're not able to identify the enemy, if you're a human and you don't know what a snake looked like during prehistoric times, you're screwed. Lion, tiger, snakes, oh my, all that shit, they was our enemies. You have to know what they look like. Tucker and them, they identify the problem, but they can't tell you what the enemy look like. They don't know who the enemy is because they're friends with the enemy, like he said with Trump. He's friends with the capitalist class. How can you be friends with the people he's trying to take down? How can you be part of the system and love being part of the system and expect someone like this to have an accurate class analysis? So this may sound good to populists, meaning people who are too afraid to call themselves anti-capitalist. That's what that is. But the people who read theory, who know history, who understand who the enemy is, people like this just sound empty to me, fam. People like, man, you see Tucker Carlson kill it? No, it's empty. It's empty. Yes, he's good on Julian Assange, but then he fucking praises Trump all the time. You guys notice how Siger had criticism of Trump? He even brought Trump, Tucker criticism of Trump, but then he immediately deflected to all like Trump. I want to stay out of politics. I don't like politics. Bullshit. You definitely like politics. You talk about politics all the time. But I'm sorry. We're almost done with this segment. I'm going a little bit long. I let him finish his thought. And
what you're responsible for is the greatest possible sin. Do you know what I mean? That's, I mean, that is the worst thing you can do as a human being, in my opinion. So I'm very mad about that. I like the idea of labor unions 100%. Show me one that actually advocates on behalf of its members, and I'll send them money because I love the idea of that. And labor has no power. Not just labor unions. We say labor. We all produce labor. And we don't have any power. All power is concentrated in finance. Not all power, but a wildly disproportionate percentage. And those who, like, you know, if you're 23, you think, well, that's kind of how economics works. That's how the world works. No. It wasn't always this way at all. Farmers had massive power. They feed the country and keep them from starving. They had the Grange movement of the late 19th, early 20th centuries. I lived next to a Grange building, which is defunct because farmers have no power, of course. I mean, I could go on forever, but the point is the idea of unions is not only good, it's essential. And the people who run them have really been disgraceful. And I would say that's true across the...
Do you guys know how funny this is to me? This is like Kwame Ture say. You have white America that pretends they hate socialism. White America pretends they hate communism, but they love collective bargaining. They love using the tactics of the socialists. So Tucker talking about how, yeah, I like the idea of unions. Yeah, it's great, but the union management sucks. Who do you think the union management is? The union management is full capitalist now. Unions was at their strongest when they were ran by communists and socialists. The same people that you hate. You guys hate socialists, you hate communists, but collective bargaining is a socialist and communist tactic. And who do you think is responsible for decreasing the power of unions, Tucker? The Republican Party and capitalists, because that is what they do. We are engaged in nonstop labor and class struggle. And as revolutionaries, our job is to keep workers their eyes on the ball, not to distract them with identity politics, not to mislead them with false enemies, false messiahs like he does with Trump. That is why, even though I largely agree with the segment, I'm glad he's criticizing the free speech right. There are a lot of takes that you have there, his analysis on foreign policy, that I find deeply unserious. Like you guys see how when I break it down, it sounds unserious. The whole spiel about white guilt, and he did it when he was on Jimmy's show talking about white guilt. Every time I see Tucker Carlson, he's asked about why is something wrong with this society, and then he says, "Oh, it's because of white guilt. Oh my God, white people are guilty. Why do they feel bad about something?" Well, there's a lot to feel bad about, for one. And for two, that is not the answer to all your questions. You guys know the answer to all his questions is white guilt, white struggle. If you listen to his interviews, that's what he say all the time. And then he turn around 10 minutes later and say, "Oh, I'm not interested in race. I'm not interested in race, but I'm gonna tell you guys why every single problem is because of white guilt and anti-white racism."